Hey everybody, Michael Tracey here. So this week we at TYT Investigates published a piece which has some interesting implications in light of recent news events. So last summer, a gentleman by the name of Brett Boylan was on what could only be described as a YouTube binge, something that many of us are familiar with in the modern age, just kind of aimlessly going from video to video, not really having any rhyme or reason about it. And he ended up stumbling upon a video that is essentially a mockumentary or a documentary of sorts on the Columbine school shooting. And for whatever reason, this video on the Columbine school shooting was getting a ton of traffic and therefore a ton of comments. And the comment section on YouTube, as I'm sure many of you are familiar, isn't the most enlightened place on the planet. In fact, it's usually full of total filth and idiocy and lunacy. But because many of us are masochists, we do tend to scroll through these comments on occasion, and this is what Brett Boylan did. After looking at this video, he scrolled down, and sure enough, one of the featured comments was a comment which gave him serious pause. And it brings a dilemma. When you're on the internet and you see a comment which appears threatening, how do you approach that comment? Do you assign any kind of significance to it? Do you dismiss it as just kind of trolling from some kind of bored adolescent? It's impossible to really say with any certitude what the meaning of any given comment is, but in the case of this comment that Brett Boylan saw, it was alarming enough that it warranted his attention, or so he thought, because the comment threatened a school shooting in alarmingly specific fashion. The commenter specified which weaponry he or she was going to use and specified that it was going to be at a school. Now, again, when you're on the internet and you're just kind of passively scrolling through comments, you don't necessarily want to attribute excess significance to any given threat because it's more than likely not going to result in anything violent. But in the case of this comment, Boylan felt that it warranted his attention. So what he did was he called up his local FBI field office. That's probably what many people would think should be the first step when you see something along these lines. So upon calling the field office and reporting the comment, Boylan didn't feel that the person on the other end of the phone was particularly moved by what he was saying. He said that she seemed like she just wanted to get off the phone, not pay much mind to it, and sure enough, Boylan didn't hear anything back from the FBI for months and months. Now, flash forward, and a person under the alias of, quote, Nicholas Cruz commented in September of last year on a video that caught the attention of the uploader of that video. And the uploader of that video contacted the FBI, and the FBI did follow up with that individual. Now, we don't know for sure, and it was never confirmed that the person posting under the name Nicholas Cruz, who threatened a school shooting, was actually the Nicholas Cruz who was apprehended for the Parkland shooting last month. But nevertheless, with that in mind, Brett Boylan's mind went back to the incident from over the summer. After he heard of the Parkland shooting, it was just natural that he would think to himself, oh, I happened to encounter a comment which appeared eerily similar to the one that Nicholas Cruz is purported to have left or allegedly left on another video. So he called back the FBI and reiterated his concerns and wanted to know, is there any way that my concern here, which I registered last summer, was recorded? Was it documented? Was it logged? Was there any action taken? And of course, there was no information really given to him. And that kind of leaves him, and I think many others who might be in a similar predicament, in a state of just anxiety, unease, maybe even a little bit of paranoia, because you don't know how exactly to handle these kind of comments in the first place. And then when you do go through official channels to report them, you're given no assurance that they were acted upon, that they were investigated. So for all you know, maybe it could just get lost in the system, and nothing would actually be done in a tangible way. Now, what I think ought to be emphasized here is that it's the opacity of the FBI reporting process which is the real issue. Because a typical person on the internet can't necessarily concern him or herself with every troll comment that they happen to come across. So the burden isn't on individual citizens, and it also shouldn't be expected that individual citizens should be excessively paranoid about the significance of these threats. I mean, we all have to kind of moderate ourselves and not overreact just because a horrific incident happens on occasion. But what could dispel some of that paranoia and unease would be a little more of a transparent process, whereby if you have a concern, if you see something which actually seems actionable enough that you should take steps to report it, then you get some kind of follow-up, you get some kind of update on what actually happened, so you're not just left totally in the dark, and you're not left to just have faith in the FBI to actually do what they claim that they are out to do, which is to investigate threats. Because as the FBI just admitted this week, they ought to have done more to address the, quote, warning signs which led up to the Parkland shooting. Now, again, do we want to invest the FBI with sort of omnipotent powers to address every single threat which might arise in a country of 330 million? Probably not. And in many cases, vesting them with that authority results in people getting entrapped, results in over-criminalization of petty activity, and that can all figure into the broader problem of mass incarceration. So that's a bigger issue, but on a smaller scale, and in a narrow sense, if you see a comment on the internet which troubles you, then you'd hope that there'd be some kind of mechanism for you to report that and to get some kind of update or some kind of just basic information about how it was handled. And Brett Boylan didn't receive that information. In fact, many months after he initially reported the comment, remember the original report was in July of last year, the comment was still up on YouTube. Now, it was buried under an avalanche of other ridiculous comments, and it's unlikely that anybody would come across it unless they knew it was there. But we did identify that the comment remained up until this month. And then once we took steps to attempt to identify who wrote the comment, to follow up with him or her, try to ascertain his or her identity, and once we contacted both YouTube and the FBI about it, in short order the comments were gone. Now, we can't say with any certainty who removed the comment or why it was removed, but it did end up getting removed after TYT inquired with both the commenter, the FBI, and YouTube. So all of this kind of amounts to just a very opaque process for dealing with this kind of thing, and it breeds a paranoia. And when we're talking about threats and attempting to minimize the threat posed by potentially unstable people with access to weaponry who want to bring harm on others, a climate of paranoia is just not a healthy environment for a reasonable person to operate in if they want to do something just normal to try to address something that they come across that concerns them. And I think this Brett Boylan incident was a good illustration of that. And unless there's some transparent process implemented, then it's probably just going to continue happening. And I don't see the rate of people leaving unhinged comments on the internet decreasing anytime soon. So it's something that people, I think, need to be cognizant of and need to try to figure out what the most prudent way to address is. I don't know that I or anybody has an absolute answer here, but it is an issue, and when you have a horrific incident like the Parkland shooting, it obviously makes people even more aware of this type of thing, and again, leaves them in a paranoid, uneasy state that isn't conducive to actually minimizing the threats at hand. So that piece went up this week. You can read it and look at some of the primary source material, and that'll do it for now. Have a great day.